Okay, let's turn our attention to iOS XE updates. And the process itself is not very difficult and not very different from the other platforms. You have the graphical interface and you have the CLI, and I'm going to show you both. But there is a concept difference here that you may want to be aware of. And the concept is about how your file is going to be packaged. There are two ways for you to install an operating system on an iOS XE machine. There is one mode or one version of the code that is going to be called the install mode. And there is another one which is going to be called the bundle mode. So the difference is important because in all cases, you're going to download from Cisco a file that is going to be labeled .bin, binary, bin. And that is what we call the bundle. That file is going to be a monolithic big file that actually contains a lot of sub-files that will be components that your switch is going to use for its various activities. For the iOS bit, for the WCM bit, for all the bits that we need to operate the system. So there are two ways you can use this file. The first one is to just download the bin file as it is and launch your system running that file. That's what we call the monolithic mode, and that's also what is called the bundle mode. You launch the bundle directly. So when your switch is going to boot, it's going to launch the entire file, read it entirely, and charge everything in memory. And as long as the system is running, it will be running all that. So this is what you used to do in the other iOS versions before. But the downside of it is that it's monolithic, so it's a very large file, and you're actually not using everything in that file. So there is another mode now, which is the install mode, where instead of loading the entire bin file, you're going to install that file into NVRAM. What this is going to do is that it's going to expand the file, create a file that will look together, which is called the packages.conf file, which is the list of all these small sub-files into the binary big monolithic system, and then it's going to extract these small files which are packages that will be running specific operations on your system. The good thing about this system is that then when your system boots in install mode, instead of charging the big binary file, it's going to simply charge the packages that you need for whatever you're doing on the switch. So at the beginning, for example, just the iOS layer, and then as you start working with access points, it's going to load the WCM, wireless control module layer. It's going to just load the packages that you need for the operations. Install mode is the recommended mode for both the 5760 and the 3850. There is a difference that the 3850, 3650, 4500 being switches, they can run either of these two images. Whereas it's strongly recommended that you only do the install mode on the 5760, you could do both on the switches. However, what you should do, what you want to do, is as often as you can, run the install mode. You would run the bundle mode only if you don't have a choice, because you have to push a file and run that file directly because something went wrong on the switch. But if you have the choice, you should go to install the file, expand the binary file, get the components in, remove the big binary file, and just launch the install mode. I'm going to show you both of them. I'm going to spend most of the time on the install file, but I'm going also to show you if you were to run the binary bundle mode, how that would look. Okay, let's go and have a look. Let's look at these different options and start from the graphical interface. Here, just like on the other platforms, there is a way for you to perform upgrades. And if you go to configuration commands, there is a menu for you to download a new code using FTP or TFTP. So it's as simple as download a code, put the IP address, put the file path, the file name, and of course, if it's FTP, you will have to put the username and password. And then if you say install, it's going to do this, install. So it's not going to be the bundle mode, it's going to be the install mode. So that's simple, but again, just like on the other platforms, I'm not going to do it here. I'm going to the CLI so you can see what happens and you can have more control about what is happening in the background if you do it from the graphical interface. But again, graphical interface will be fine, but I would like to show you more in detail what happens. By the way, I'm using this FTP server in all the demos where we play with the configurations and the upgrades. So I have on my laptop running an FTP server, which is an FTP Lite server, where I have only one user, which is Cisco, and this is why you see me always putting the same IP address and always using the Cisco credentials. That's something which is very easy to manipulate if you manage networks. You don't need something heavy, it can be anything on your laptop. All right. Okay, so let me not do it on the graphical interface and go to the CLI. I'm clicking install to show you the initial phase, but I'm going to stop it. It will tell you in progress, and it's going to try to clean up your system, download, and install, go to install mode. All right, let me interrupt that and go to the CLI. So on the CLI, I have a few ways of doing it as well. One way is to go straight into the install. And straight into the install means that you're going to say software install, and you're going to point to a location where the file is going to be. So it's going to be software install file, and then TFTP or FTP in my case, / the IP address, / the folder, / the name of the file that you want to push down. It's going to be a bin file, and then boom, you say enter, and you're going to install it. So this is perfectly fine, and this works well. The only thing is that it's going to download the file in RAM, then it's going to clean up the system, create some space, install the file, and then it's going to do everything in the background. So you may not see everything that happens, that's one thing. And the other thing is that if there is any connectivity issue, it might take a while before the system fails. In other words, it may start to download, then it may try to use a file that couldn't download very well because one bit is missing and it was not detected in a checksum, and it's only during the install that you may see an issue. So what I like to do when I'm on an unreliable connection is to download the file first into NVRAM and install it from there. So again, either way is fine if your connection is reliable, and if you don't want to waste your time looking at what's happening, the software install file and then pointing to the location where the file is fine as well. But let me show you the other way, where you download first. If I say dir, you will have the list of all the files installed in NVRAM, and you see those files that have the PKG extension, that's the package, right? So I'm not in a bundle mode here, I'm in an install mode. So the bundle, the bin file was expanded, and it was expanded into its individual PKG components. So the only thing I see here is the PKG system. I don't see the bin file anymore. If I want to download that file here, I can just use the usual command copy FTP flash or copy TFTP flash. You know that command by heart if you have a CCNA writing and switching, where you just point to the remote host IP address. The file, the destination file is going to be natively in flash anyway, so you don't need to point to anything special unless you want to put it in a special folder. And here again, I'm going to save you time by skipping across the downloads phase so that the file is already here and we continue from there. Okay. So I saved you 400 seconds of your life. All right. So now if I do dir again, I should see the file somewhere in my flash system. Let's check. All right. So I still have my PKG files, but now I also have this new upgraded bin file. And you can see that my package files are 03.06.01e code. And what I'm downloading is 06.02a code. So I'm getting the new maintenance release for that code. So notice the 2 and 1. My new code is 2. I just downloaded this file. What I want to do now is to install it into my system. So the way I do it is to say software install, just as usual, and file as usual, but instead of pointing to an FTP server outside, I'm going to point directly to where my file is, which is now in flash. So I say flash, and then the name of the file. Boom, paste, and voila. So it's going to go through a few steps of operations, expanding the file, installing it, cleaning it. So there's a few things that are going to happen in the background. So here again, I'm going to cut a little bit. If you do it for real, it's going to take a little bit longer than what you see here. But it's not that long, but it's going to take maybe 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes for you to do it. Once it's done, you see what happens here. It's interesting. It says, I'm going to remove the old package because I don't need those packages. So I'm going to drop everything 6.1, and I'm going to only keep the 6.2 files. And that is going to create a file that we call packages.conf. I'm going to show you at the end how that looks. But you see there is a sort of cleanup mechanism at the end that's going to remove the files you don't want. And then the question is going to be, hey, I'm going to reboot and load a new software. Are you okay if we reboot? In every case, you should say yes, reboot first and then do something after if you want to, but let it finish. Say yes, reboot, have a clean operating system, and then continue what you have to do. But just for the demo, I'm going to say no here, just to show you what is in there now. So I say no, and I go back to the prompt and say dir. And you see, it's a kind of a strange mix because now I have some 6.1 files still. I also have some 6.2 package files that were expanded. And then I have the bin file that is still here. So I did interrupt this process, but if you were to say yes, which we should do, right? You should say that. It would finish cleaning up these old files, reboot, and then as it reboots and successfully load the new package files, remove the bin file. So you would have a sort of cleanup, so to speak, of the NVRAM. The fact that I said no, it's not completed completely, right? I still have some left over from the previous code, but those are files I need because I'm still running 6.1 now, right? Until I reboot, I'm still on 6.1. So I still need some core packages in 6.1. And this is also why you don't want to say no, because you cannot really use that switch much longer here. You have removed some of 6.1 files, so you don't have a fully operating system in 6.2 yet because you have not loaded this code yet, but it's not running 6.1 completely because we're starting to remove some 6.1 files. So you are in this intermediate state where you don't want to stay. So you should have said yes. But anyway, let's keep on looking. So if I go conft now, I can decide to boot in bundle. So I would not have installed that file, right? I would have just kept it in NVRAM, but if I didn't want to install it, if I wanted to run the bundle logic, which again you shouldn't do, then you would just keep the bin file, not run the software install command, just download the bin file into NVRAM, then go conft and say boot system, flash, and you point to the bin file. So if you were to do so, you would just load that entire bundle at boot time, and that would be running in bundle mode. But again, as we said, you don't want to do that. The install is better, it's newer, it's more efficient. So unless you have to, don't run the bundle. Yeah, use the software install. That's the right way to do things on this platform. And let me reload my switch now and reload. And as I reload, I'm going to save you time again by skipping the reload phase, but I'm going to stop at a while here just to show this process. As you install the new file, you're going to upgrade your code, and that's going to take a while, so be ready. Depending on which code you're migrating from to which code, you might see this, or you might be seeing a series of PSSS, PSSSS, and it can take somewhere and anywhere between 2-3 minutes and 15 minutes. So if you don't have a console connection to your switch and you're rebooting and things seems to be slow, don't worry, just wait, give it a 10-15 minute slot, and then try to telnet back to the box. Don't expect it's going to take just a few seconds. Rebooting includes upgrading the code, finalizing the code, and the microcode as you see here, and that takes a while. So don't be surprised if your box is not responsive for a while. That's normal. Okay, I'm going to skip that so you don't wait the entire time. And after about here, in my case, was 6 or 7 minutes, the switch is back. And there is a command that you can use as well to remove manually the last leftover from the previous code, and that's software clean. And when you do that, it's going to look at what is running in NVRAM. It's going to see that packages.conf file that we're going to look at in a second. And it's going to list what files you're actually using in this new code 6.2. And then it's going to look at what is in NVRAM, and everything which is the old code is going to be removed. So it says, I'm not going to touch anything 6.2, but all these files that you have still left over from 6.1, I'm going to delete those, okay? And of course I say yes. If you say software install, you do not necessarily have to do this, but because I didn't reboot and let the system finish cleaning up, I had these left over in my NVRAM, remember? So I'm cleaning them manually. It's always nice, to do software clean. That allows you to get rid of all the stuff you don't use in the code. And of course, it gets rid of the 6.1. Cleanup is completed. And now if I want to look at this packages.conf, just as a side note, you don't need to do that, but just to tell you what this is, it's the list of all the packages that you run in the active code. And you see, basically, if you say more packages.conf, that's basically listing the content of the packages.conf file. It shows you what is inside that file, and it's just the list of all the package files that your bundle contain and that were installed on the system. Each of them with a checksum, so we can authenticate them. But that's basically all the files you're running now, or that you may need to run the 6.2 code. Pretty simple. And if I say here, of course, what is left is my 6.2 code. All right, so that's the upgrade on iOS XE. Again, you can use the web interface, that's fine, but it's nice to be aware of what happens in the background on the CLI. And of course, the web interface is always installed, it's never bundled.